of owning a cafe and other heroic deeds by Bewed to Strow. Chapter 28. Community. As unbelievable as it was, Shouta found the deeds to the property handed to him with a pen by a still strange smile. This wasn't exactly a sale, was it? The poor woman had been a remarkably good sport, considering she wouldn't be getting any commission, wasn't she? Kozuki-san. Then a few signatures and a bottle of sake later, the former florist and its apartment were his. No, it was theirs, not just him and the boys whom he'd supported, but the community's. God, he didn't know what to do or say or think. But should we not get Dabi-kun over? Oh, and did I see that wonderfully polite boy, Shinso, in the cafe too? Blanking. Oh, yes, they should be here too. He could trust the flame quirk user to smack him if this was all some kind of strange, wonderful delusion, couldn't he? Shouta felt himself nodding. Mimi-chan, he breathed. Hitoshi is my ward now. You can't begin to understand what having this extra room will mean. He managed. Oh dear! The wonderful older woman seemed to coo at once. Good heavens! So that's why you approached the realtor. The woman he'd addressed gushed a hand, fanning at her face. We were planning to surprise you with this gift at the end of the Sano festival next week, she told him. Goodness, how fortuitous that we were ready, huh? It must be the work of fate or the gods, maybe so. Fishing out his phone, he sent a quick text to Dabi. I need a reality check. Could you both come over after locking up the cafe? We're upstairs. And accepted a small cup from the pretty ornate set that Yukiko had brought over for the celebration of the rice wine, because this was apparently what you did during such occasions from her. Please, Bibi-chan, I can't just take the place, he said, his tone odd and disbelieving. Surely I can... I don't want a single yen from you, young man, she warned, her tone strict yet kind. Now then, I believe that we have some visitors to greet now, don't we? Swallowing thickly, because this was more than he could ever have hoped for. With yen he'd been putting aside for a deposit, he could quite easily pay Aranaka-san to come by to do the work that was needed, and upon closer inspection of the paperwork, he could see that the unit had a full and complete survey. Everything was up to code. They could theoretically get to work straight away. Well, once Kohaku-san gave him the all clear. Could he call him now? The man had already been so kind, and had spent the previous evening at the police station, there in his defense, of all things. Before visiting them this morning, he'd given him a warm hug and told him, try not to worry too much about the fools out there. They'll be rooted out in the end, you know? He's such a good man. Now, he'd call him tomorrow. There was no point in rushing things, and hell, this could all be some kind of strange hallucination he was experiencing. Maybe he'd been knocked out by one of Basama's goons, and this was all a dream? It was an irrational thought. However, that make a lot more sense than Mimi-chan just giving him a property that would solve the majority of his problems and make life in general so much better. Hey? Looking behind him, where the three of the lovable older ladies were flocking to them, showed a grin from an owlishly blinking Dabi to the bewildered child in his arms. So I'm not dreaming then. He heard himself chuckle as they were brought into the room. How surprises went! This was a pretty spectacular one, wasn't it? The rest of the afternoon and evening had been lively. Many of the adults who usually attended self-defense lessons had called or texted him to offer any help they could, with messages that promised to come by at some point before the following Sunday to check in on them. By now the rumor mill had done its job, and most were aware that Hitoshi was living with him. Wonderfully, he'd not heard any derogatory comments about Kimiko, living in an area that was for the majority so run down and filled with people who had their own struggles with money, poverty, addiction, and quirk bias. He figured and was pleased to see that sympathy was enmeshed within many of them, especially since most of the men and women who worked in Basama's brothels would more than likely live locally too. He was glad that Sir Night-Eye would try his best to look out for all of them. God, as much as he would have wanted to help, he had his hands quite full at the moment, didn't he? However, it was for them, and people like them, who'd been driven to such choices through lack of education, broken homes, abuse, and who knew what else, that he wanted to enhance the study area and work towards making a place where people could build their skills and actively look for work as well. Yes! If he could help people not turn to that kind of work, not that he was judging, he knew and understood that some people sometimes, even because of their quirks, enjoyed sex and wanted to be paid for it, or villainy in general. The biggest crime statistics around here revolved around robbery, after all. And he'd feel better. He'd be making even more of a difference. A difference too late for the dusky, lavender-haired woman whose son he was supporting, but since time traveling wasn't an option, he just had to keep going. It was the only logical choice, and wouldn't their news of the cafe's upcoming extension be something wonderful to share with her when they saw her tomorrow? Hitoshi, so goddamn brave, was, his little face smiling, diligently drawing some pictures for her now as they sat in the study area whilst Dabi had ventured out in the balmy heat to meet Tomra halfway, his smile delighted and a promise to help the boy color in a few of his drawings when he and the other returned, lilting in the air as he went. Such a good kid. And knowing how these things worked, prison and holding facilities, had to be wary, he knew. People could have fused their powers into all kinds of things these days. He checked with the lieutenant that the child would be able to give them to her. The beagle-headed man had promised on his honor that she could have and keep them regardless of Friday's trial and its outcome. There shouldn't even be a trial, should there? Moshi, Rebecca, real speaking. But what could he do? It'd be illogical to have spent his life trying to undo the underlying reasons behind the rise in villainy, well, as feasibly possible anyway, just to turn around and try to break the woman out of custody, wouldn't it? What a stupid thing to think. His heart couldn't help but long for such a solution, though. Baraka-san, this is Aizawa from the Noroneko Cafe. I was wondering if I could hire you to do some construction-based work. Then, as 1700 crept up on him, he'd looked outside, a flash of guilt for not running the evening classes quashed when the teens had returned, Tomra sporting a small duffel bag, a smile, and "Congrats, Captain. Now do us all a favor and rest for a hot minute or something. You don't want stress lines at your age, do you?" And decided to make a few calls. Aizawa-san, of course! Feeling himself smile at Ochako's father's enthusiasm, Shouta chuckled. The man had insisted on coming by that evening. That's okay. With his wife and child. He'd make an evening meal for all of them as a thank you, of course, and just like that, everything started coming together. When a rickety old K truck pulled up next to the road at 1800, he was further surprised to see the local pro trio. Hey, just call us Lab Night Night. That's pretty cool, huh? That's our official Twitter handle, and what I call the part of my soon-to-be award-winning radio show's late night Sunday segment, you know? The ambitious blonde grinned whilst using finger guns, too. They could probably smell what you're cooking, a bunch of measures. Dabi had huffed with an eye roll that he knew to be more fond than derisive. Whether they liked it or not, the enthusiastic heroes had weaseled their way into their cafe culture, and regardless of his initial dismissal of them, he knew that the teen enjoyed the banter they shared. Tomra, however, still seemed a little cautious around them. Sure, the boy was friendly enough, but he rarely started conversations or joined in any that he wasn't directly included in. Not that he had to socialize with them, of course. He just didn't want the shy boy to feel left out, that was all. He'd come a long way in the 2 weeks that he'd been coming to the Noroneko, and was hoping that little by little they could chip away at his self-esteem issues and help him to keep on smiling. All Might and Izuku were really rubbing off on him, weren't they? Hey! Shouta! Demi-Dars! Mame Toshin! Tomitomra! How are some of our favorite listeners doing, eh? Waving the blonde did. Yep, it was clearly being led by the nose alongside his female partner who was wrapped around his shoulders, their stomachs actually rumbling as they leaned against the service bar it was stood behind. whilst the teens waved from where they lounged in the gaming area, whilst Hitoshi rushed over to greet them. Watching as the blonde caught the tot in his arms and lifted him up for him and midnight to pass over, Shouta then looked to where Loud Cloud was walking with the Obabaka family, the thrilled brunette, riding on a nimbus he'd made for her. Damn, that was cute!
Well, since you're here, would you like to join us for dinner?
He did, Bam, and the heroes made that puppy dog look at him before nodding rapidly and filling up the booth behind Debbie's preferred haunt. Everyone knew that outside of busy hours, the stall closest to the door was his. Shaking his head ruefully, he watched as Hitoshi and his friend were flown back to the study area with the girl's mother. She was looking far less pale today. Her eyes were brighter, too. Wendell joined them, her polite form offering a pleased greeting to the teenagers, who similarly returned the gesture.
Dinner won't be ready for a while yet,
he advised them before nodding at the man he'd originally invited.
So we can head next door.
Wait! What? Oh, does this mean that the cat cafe is a go? Smiling despite himself, when the pros balked and clapped their hands excitedly, Shouta gestured to Rio.
Obabaka-san is hopefully going to tell me what I can and can't do before I start applying for planning permission, but thanks to Baby-chan, the unit now belongs to us.
He told them, his smile spreading further. That's amazing, the trio called, their arms raising in a cheer. Oh, can we come and have a look-see? The sun-kissed man asked. Oh, we can help too, you know. I'm pretty great with a paintbrush. And spectacular at cleaning. I'll get to use my favorite feather duster, the woman added, her face filled with delight. And I'll put together a construction work playlist to keep us on going. I'll get it! Mike grinned as they all got up and made to follow him and the sandy-haired man, who was already sporting his utility belt and a notepad, his own grin excited. Nodding, because how could he say no to those faces? He was getting soft. He grabbed his next set of keys and looked back to the younger people still enjoying their game with Hitoshi, Ochako, and their mother playing lookout.
We'll be 10 minutes,
he told the other.
Call me if you're next door show.
Dabi chuckled out, his eyes locked on the TV screen, whilst he and Tomura fought some kind of demonic beast.
I think we can handle everything until you get back, so go on and show off those awesome ideas of yours,
he told him.
It's about time you took more pride in yourself and all the stuff you do, you know.
Walking into the unit.
Okay, let's find the low-bearing walls, take some measurements, and see what we're dealing with.
Had felt even better than the first time around.
Well, goodness, your plan to knock through the toilet block of the door should be fine. I can redirect the water pipes to add some new bathrooms over there and here. Once the old system has been cemented up, more linoleum should cover it up nicely.
Already he could tell that the layout would work. Sure, the changes wouldn't happen overnight, but he could hardly ask for more miracles, could he? Not after so many had already sought him out.
Wow, this storage space is excellent. The health and safety inspectors won't be able to fault you having a separate area for animal maintenance, especially since it's so far away from the kitchen.
There was also the added bonus of the old florist's door that could be used as a further fire exit, and thanks to Mimi-chan's kindness, he wouldn't need to go through the costly mither of outfitting the space with anything other than furnishings, cat products, and a few air conditioning units.
Man, oh man, how much of this will be the cat enclosure? I was thinking,
he mused, his hands gesturing,
that the greater part of that space there could be cordoned off with glass walls and doors. The toilet that exists now could be used by the people inside the cat habitat, and we could build some larger ones here to service everyone else,
he said.
That way anyone with allergies has access, and it should limit queuing, too,
he allowed before moving to the currently metal-shuttered window.
2 booths could share this window, and then just here 2 more tables.
He grinned.
Then this area is going to be a continuation of the study space with a careers hub. Eventually, and...
Stopping with a blink, he regarded his audience, his cheeks baking.
Sorry, I'm ranting, aren't I?
It's... You're just so... Mike tried while fanning his eyes, his friends nodding along. I mean, it sounds amazing and logical, he praised before throwing a leather-clad arm across the younger man's shoulder. I can see it, you know?
he crowed before his own blush for me. And I was wondering if, on a Sunday, we could, maybe have my birthday party here, as civilians.
Observing the audacious blonde, who had a heart to just as big as his voice was loud. Curiously, Shouta looked to where Midnight was talking poor Uraraka-san's ear off as he was measuring before regarding him and the taller man, who was stood at his other side, those golden hands shoved together in prayer.
Well, if you're okay with being out of costume, I'm sure we could get some blinds to cover the windows or something, he offered. Was a big day.
You mean it?
I'm not in the habit of saying things I don't mean.
He huffed, his head shaking ruefully.
I'll be hosting parties for some of the study group too, so June 19th and July 1st will be a joint party for Hitoshi and Denki on Sunday 30th, with Izuku's happening on the 15th.
My birthday is July 7th!
The boys just blood cried in a muted stage whisper.
This is perfect!
Chuckling at his enthusiasm, the eatery owner allowed himself to be pulled into a hug with a man, whilst Loud Cloud somehow managed to wrap around them both. If Ochako's father had laughed snorted loudly when Midnight bowled them all to the floor where she leapt atop them, then he was too busy being gruffly annoyed, shoving the laughing idiots off of him and grunting curses to notice.